First question, before teaching drama, what was your experience with the arts?
So, you know, like before I even started like entering a classroom teaching, you mean? That
Yeah.
kinda? Oh my gosh. Well, the funniest thing is like when I was in high school, I was not super involved in the drama program. Like I took drama classes, but I was only involved in one after school production because my passion in high school was actually journalism. I was the editor of the school newspaper when I was in high school. So that was sort of where I really loved it, but I was dancing outside of school. And so when I got to college, I had a professor in my intro to drama class that I was taking as an elective who said, hey, we're doing Midsummer Night's Dream. You should try out. We need dancers. And so I tried out and got a part as the second fairy. And it was very exciting because it was different than dance. In other words, I was like talking and people were responding directly to what I was saying and not just how I was moving like had been with dance. And so I decided to keep taking classes, and I eventually earned a double major in theater and political science because I was hoping to go into law at the time, and so I just kept taking these political science classes for that, but then I just kept taking the drama to supplement all the empty holes in my schedule. And then I had another professor who asked me to go to a gifted program in a local school in North Carolina with them to teach. And that's the first time I set foot in a classroom as a drama teacher, and it was super memorable. I mean, those kids were so energized and so creative, and the teacher kept commenting about how the quietest kid was like the most creative kid in the room that day. And so I think that was the first time I really realized that maybe I really wanted to be a drama teacher. And then I did a performance of Dracula the musical when I was a junior for a group of kids who have never seen theater. Like they had never gone to a play. And so they were in there, and I walked out on stage, and it's a comedy, and they could not stop laughing. They could not stop laughing at us. Like the energy in that room was like insane. So I thought, maybe I should see if there's a degree. Maybe I can make a living out of this because law school was okay, but I realized it really wasn't what I really wanted to do as I thought I had in high school. Yeah. And so that's sort of where it was. And then I went to graduate school for Theater for Youth at the University of North Carolina, Greensboro, which is really a directing and education degree. So I was taking directing classes with all the other master's students, and I also took all these theater education classes, and so I went more into the classroom. I toured with the Children's Theater for a while, the North Carolina Theater for Young People, which I became the general manager of. And so we went to schools all over the state of North Carolina with our little van filled with our set smushed in all around all of us, and we did a show called Tar Heel Tales, which was hilarious and fun. And I'll never wear overalls again because we wore overalls every day for months in that show. And then I was fortunate enough to be in a situation where I could go to New York City and sort of see what that life would be like. And I didn't have any intention of going as an actor. I really still wanted to be in arts education. And so I saw an ad in the New York Times randomly, and they were like looking for an arts administrator, years of experience required, et cetera. And it was really small, but it didn't say who it was or anything like that. At this point, I was temping in the World Trade Center, like every starving actor I think was doing at the time was temping. Yeah. And it turned out that on the caller ID on my phone, like 3 days later, up came Lee Strasberg, which, by the way, Lee Strasberg is a very famous acting teacher, but he died in 1981. So I was like, why is his caller ID coming up?
Yeah, wow.
And then I realized it was the Lee Strasberg Theater Institute, which I didn't even realize was in New York. I knew there was one in Hollywood, but I didn't realize there was one in New York. And they were looking for someone to be a administrator for their Young Actors program. And so I went in and interviewed and got a job, and I spent 3 years in New York in that position, learning about arts administration and studying the method there, and meeting my mentor of a dance teacher, Jeffrey Ferguson. And it was a great experience, but I super miss being in a classroom in like a school. And through a weird turn of events, I found Walker and was hired 3 years later and moved down here, and I've never left. So that's sort of my experience before I got here.
Wow, and you started off, with like North Carolina, right?
Yeah.
And all that, and then moving to New York. How was that like transition?
So it was, so the thing that's kind of interesting about me is that I have lived in like 11 different places. My father was in the military when I was younger, and then his job in computer technologies took him all over the place. And so moving for me was never anything really shocking.
Yeah.
However, I had never lived in a metropolitan city like New York before.
Yeah.
And God, it was expensive. It was expensive.
Yeah.
And I thankfully went up with two friends. So we lived actually like most people do. They live in New Jersey, just on the other side. So we lived in Hoboken, and I was there for a while. And then I eventually, once I got my job and was going, I was able to scrape by enough to live by myself in this very tiny studio apartment, again in Jersey, in a little
Yes.
town called Union City, which is literally on top of the Lincoln Tunnel.
Wow.
And yeah, it was like 6 months later, I knew how to work, mass
Yeah.
transit because I sold my car, But it was cool. I mean, my heart is still in New York. That's I love that city. I love everything about that city. I love the people in that city. I think the opportunities that city offers, no matter who you are really great. But that city is not for everyone because it certainly can beat you down
Yeah.
after a while because it really is the city that never sleeps. It never stops.
Yeah.
You know.
So moving on to just Walker,
Yeah.
how long have you been a part of the Walker Drama Department?
So I was hired in for the start of the 2003-2004 school year, and so that would mean I just finished my 16th year here.
Wow.
Yeah, it's the longest I've actually lived anywhere in my life.
Really?
Yeah, yeah.
So that means you have to have a passion for this, obviously.
Yeah.
So what drives your passion for the arts?
Such a big question. I think part of it for me, there's two things about the arts that I really like. The first thing that I really like is that everyone needs a voice,
Yes.
and everyone has to find that voice. And they find it at different points in their lives, at different ages, and they also find different ways to express that voice. And I just feel like the arts has such a unique way of giving a voice to people, whether it's using their body through dance, or whether it's singing a song, or playing an instrument, or creating a beautiful sculpture or painting, or telling the story of somebody in a play. I think it just gives them a way to do that gets heard better.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah.
And I think it also gets done in a way in which people don't realize what they're hearing or seeing. It kind of can hit them later. It can hit an audience later, which I really like.
Yeah.
But I think the other thing that I'm so passionate about in the arts is that it gives kids such confidence.
Yeah.
Kids in particular. I think it does it for adults too, because at Strasberg there were a lot of, I was involved also with the adult acting program as well too. I saw a lot of people as adults gain confidence, gain a voice, gain a way to express themselves. But I think being a kid is just tough.
Yeah.
It's just tough. There's a lot of external pressures on kids these days, even at a really young age you see it. And I think sometimes kids are afraid to speak up. And I think the arts gives them a confidence to know that they can. I also think it gives them an opportunity to fail, because I think the arts are such a vulnerable thing. If you don't paint well, everyone knows it. If you
Yeah.
don't sing well, everyone knows it. You can't really truly hide. So when you make a mistake, everyone sees it, but it doesn't matter because it was your mistake, you made it, and then you learn from it and you keep on going. Because I think failure, I don't think you have to seek failure out in the arts. I think it's going to happen, and I think it just makes you more...
It gives you more thick skin, tougher.
Yeah, and
in a
you
way.
have to have that, I
Yeah.
think. But I also, at the same time, it also gives you heart, which you got to have both.
Yeah.
You can't be one or the other. I don't think.
Okay. So how has the arts at Walker evolved since you arrived here at school?
Yeah. So it's a lot of ways. First of all, the facilities, which, is the sort of external piece of it that everybody can see. Our gym, that is now really a performing arts space with acoustical tiling and lighting and all of those things and stages and stuff. We have the brand new band room, and we have a dance studio now. We have these beautiful art rooms. The facilities themselves, of course, have evolved over time. Part of that is due because of the program itself. So like when I first got here, ceramics didn't exist. It was really just foundations of art and painting and drawing. And then we had maybe a couple of kids that were doing AP. Now we have like 5 or 6 every year, which is a lot for the size of our school.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the band program, so the band had just started not long before I got there. So I think it was like maybe 2 or 3 years before I got there. The first band only had 3 kids in it. They just got out there they did, it was only 3.
Yeah, wow.
They got out on the football field and they played a song and at halftime, and that was like our band. And then the next year, like more kids came, and then the next year more kids came, and then the middle school program, of course, was trying to build at the same time. And so those middle school kids that were in 6th grade when that little band of 3 in high school started, had collected more numbers and moved up. And so, now we have a band of 40 to 60, depending on the year, which, is a lot. It's a lot. And so, I've seen it evolve that way. I've also seen, I think I've also seen more kids take a chance and try an art class beyond just what's required of graduation.
Yeah.
I mean, I wish they would do even more. But I do think there are more kids that,
Or just trying things out.
Yeah, I mean, like, that's the cool thing about Walker, I think, no matter what. I mean, like, if you want to try a epidemiology class, you can. If you want to try ceramics, you can. So, I mean, I think more kids go beyond just the 2 classes, which I think is another way it's evolved.
Now, this one is a little more opinionated.
Oh, no.
And feel free if you don't want to answer it, it's fine.
Yeah.
But since you've been here, what has been your favorite play or musical that you've directed?
That's so funny. I get asked that all the time. I mean, the kids, of course, that were just in a show always ask me that.
Yeah.
Like, is this your favorite? So I actually do have a couple of favorites. And the reason I have favorites is really because of the process that was involved in it.
Yes.
We did a show, and I wish I could remember the year off the top of my head. I should. Mr. Arjona will tell you I'm terrible at numbers, remembering them. That's why he's the economist. I think The Yellow Boat by David Sarr was my most favorite straight play that we did in our non-musical. It was a true story about a boy who was a hemophiliac in the 80s, and he contracted HIV/AIDS, and then unfortunately succumbed to that, complications from that when he was like 8 years old. And his dad runs the Child's Play Theater in Arizona, where he's retired now, David Sarr. And he wrote this beautiful play about his son's story. And Benjamin was the name of his son, and Benjamin used to draw. And so I had seen the play many a time when I was in graduate school, and I thought, this would be an interesting story to bring to our school. And so David Sarr came to school. He met with us, he watched the show, he gave me notes, he talked to the kids, he did phone interviews with them. We took the play to the Georgia Theater Conference, and we won some accolades there. We took it to the GHSA 1 Act and won accolades there as well too. And the group of kids that were in that show were like kids that had never done a show before. It was like their first time, and then kids who had been in theater. And it was the most fun ever. It was the most fun. I really, really enjoyed that show. I mean, I have other favorites too, but I mean, that one for me like sticks out.
Okay.
Just because I think the emotional journey that was attached to it. My favorite musical, I mean, honestly, last year's Disaster is very, very close to my other favorite one, which is The Drowsy Chaperone. And I think it's for the same reasons. I mean, it was just a really good group of kids that really liked working together.
Yeah.
I mean, at least they seemed to like working together, right? I don't know if that was true, but I mean, they seemed all to be so happy to come to practice, and the show is really funny, and nobody knew those shows. Nobody knew Drowsy Chaperone at the time. It had just been released for performances, and also Disaster was the same way. And so I think a lot of our audiences came in not knowing what it was, and were really pleasantly surprised by how funny all of it was.
Yeah.
And those two shows for sure. Drowsy Chaperone, though, ekes it out just a little bit.
And Disaster won a Schuler.
It did. It won a Schuler. It won a Schuler Award. It was, yeah, it's funny. We were in the Schuler Awards the very first year they started, and we were one of 12 schools. Because when it started, like nobody really knew about it. And other states do Schuler Award like things and have done them for years. There's one in Texas, there's one in Pennsylvania. And then those kids that win Best Actor and Actress go up to New York and compete in the National High School Musical Theater Awards. And so like, I was like, let's just do this. Let's put Walker's name out there. We do a lot of stuff. And so we won that year as well too. Mr. Schreiner won for Best Set for our production of Sweeney Todd. We had a ton of nominations and everything. Of course, we were only one of 12 at the time. But ever since then, our name has just kind of been kept in the mix.
Yeah.
And now it's 75 schools this year. And the fact that we were the one that won
super competitive.
was like even more amazing to us. And the fact that we've gotten nominations and we got honorable mentions in other areas too. So, and we did with Drowsy too. Drowsy Chaperone, we got a lot of nominations that year too. We didn't win, but we got a lot of nominations.
So the next question is, what's the best piece of advice that you want to give a Walker artist or a performer? What's the best piece of advice that you can give them?
Wow, that's I would say, and it's something I think I would tell my high school self. Don't be afraid to push yourself to a place that you don't think you can go. I think Lee Strasberg always said that everyone is born with talent. Every human being in the world is born with talent. It's what you do with that talent that makes you different. And so I think our kids, all of our kids that are artists, and even our kids that are athletes, and our kids that are, would consider themselves just academics. I think high school is the time to like really see how far you can go. But I think it's so hard to do because you're always afraid of what everyone else is going to think about you, right? Like that's that part of like why it sucks to be a teenager sometimes, right? And I look back and I wished that I had a drama, but my drama teacher one day got upset with me in drama class in high school, and he yelled at me and he told me I had no talent to get off a stage. Wow. And that stopped me from doing more. I threw myself into journalism, and that was still a wonderful thing for me in the end. But like, I always wonder what would have happened if I did not let that one moment when he was probably just having a horrible bad day.
Yeah.
If I hadn't let that stop me, and I just like kept on trying out, and I kept on doing those things, like what would I have been? What would I have done? It's the same with dance too. I was fortunate enough to win a couple scholarships, but I wasn't able to take advantage of those, and I wondered what would have happened if I had found a way to take advantage of those. What path I would have gone on creatively, or how different of a teacher I would be right now, how different of an artist I would be. So my goal would be, don't be afraid. Like do it. Just do it.
Yeah.
Just do it.
So this is more just so people who maybe aren't familiar with just the production side of, musicals and straight plays.
Yeah.
This one's just for them, kind of.
Yeah.
How's the process of directing musicals different from straight plays?
So the musical has a huge production team of adults in this building, and the straight play, the non-musical, does not. And it's because you have so many different elements in a musical. So you have dance, and you have the singing, and you have the instrumentation, and you have the costuming, and you have the lighting, and you have sound. And because the scale of the story is being told usually so large, you kind of have to break that up and have people responsible for it. It's why we have like 100 kids involved in the show, because it takes that many kids to put it together.
Yeah.
But I can't manage 100 kids by myself. Otherwise, I wouldn't be very good at it.
Yeah.
Or I should say, the show wouldn't be very good.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Schreiner takes care of the technical piece of it. We were fortunate, an alum in April Andrew came back and has been working on the costuming side of it and teaching our kids. We've had an outside sound designer come in and work with our students. This year we'll have an outside lighting designer come in and work with our students. Mrs. Walker works with all that vocal piece of it. Mr. Motter works with the instrument piece of it. Like it takes, and then Miss Hawk also does property. So like it takes all of those people all that time. And we meet over the summer. We have, biweekly production meetings just to get everything together. And then there's a student stage manager, an assistant stage manager, and 2 crew chiefs who are like working also as well. In the non-musical, it's like me, Mr. Schreiner, and April, and some stage managers, and that's it, right? And so it's much smaller. You also are talking about a musical that has a cast of like 20 to 30 kids.
Yes.
And then the straight play usually is like 8 to 12. So it's like much
Smaller,
much
yes.
much smaller. We rehearse 5 days a week, sometimes 6 days a week for 3 to 5 hours for the musical, for a 9-week period before we start technical rehearsals. For the straight play, we'll rehearse 3 hours a day, 4 to 5 days a week for 5 weeks before we have to do tech rehearsal. So it's even a shorter rehearsal period too. It's because the material is different too. It's like less moving parts.
Yeah. And you don't have to sing. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't have to sing. I mean, yes, that's true. There's always exceptions, but
Yeah. Next question.
yeah.
Is there a common misconception that outsiders have about the arts that you want to get cleared away?
Yeah, I mean, I think people think it's easy.
Yeah. It's not.
It's
At
not,
all.
and I think it's just that's a credit to people that are like sculpting and painting and dancing and whatever. It's like they
Yeah.
make it look
Easy.
easy.
Yeah.
But I think the other misconception is that it's it doesn't take physical stamina. I think is the other thing,
Yeah.
right? Like athletes. There's a mental and physical stamina that's required, and it's like evident. Like when you see a softball game, or you see a football game, or you see a baseball game, or basketball, like you can see the athleticism, and you see the mental toughness of that player, on the court or on the field or whatever the
Yeah.
case may be. Like it's evident to someone watching it. But I don't think an audience seeing a play necessarily knows that that's going on, right? Because while they're up there saying these lines and embodying a character, they also have to make sure they're standing in the right light. They have to make sure they come in at the right time. They have to make sure they cross over and sit down on the couch at the right time. They have to make sure they get off stage and get their costume change, And some of the stories are like, okay, I'm like, this is a really happy, joyous moment, and I stepped off stage, and now it's like 6 weeks later, and I'm depressed, and then I have to walk right back on, right? Like
Yeah.
that takes a total different kind of mental
Capability,
toughness.
yeah.
And I think physically, it's difficult. I mean, obviously in a musical, there is a much more physical rigor because you're singing and dancing, 60% of the time on stage. But I think in a straight play, I think it's that way too. I mean, when we did the Diary of Anne Frank this year, the mental toughness was, I think, the biggest challenge for them because, they were showing these families living in the annex for, a very, 2 years. So they were, in 2.5 hours, they were showing 2 years of their life. But physically, Ellie had to make potatoes and kale, and Emma's serving them, and Jared's playing cards, and Katrina's writing in her diary, and she's really writing, and Jillian's really doing a crossword puzzle. But at the same time as they're doing that, they have to remember that they're starving. They have to be really quiet. They're upset with their mom that day. I mean, there's all of these other things
Factors,
that they're having to do, and so. Aside from the fact, I think that probably goes with people thinking it's easy. I think they don't realize the mental and physical toughness that has to come from performing.
Now, I know every year when you announce the next musical play, there's just always a big question, what is it going to be?
Yeah.
Now, is there a musical play that you haven't, produced at Walker that you want to do in the future?
And let me disclaimer, this is not the one we're doing this year.
Yeah.
Right? Because they try to do weird, they have a whole system where they're like, she wore blue today, that means it's going to be this. They come up with these weird things of trying to guess it, because it's very important to a lot of kids on campus, I know that. So there's a couple of shows that I want to do at Walker, or that I want to direct, because those are two different things, I think. Because there's material that I would love to direct, but I don't think that high school students would be the best match for that material.
Yeah, no, I think in general, just if someone was gave you all the resources in the world, gave you every licensing opportunity.
Oh, good God. Okay, so I probably there's a musical that Lin-Manuel Miranda, who wrote Hamilton, did It was one of his early ones that really gained him recognition. It was called In the Heights.
Yes.
I love that show. I love everything about that show. That show is, the story is driven by dance. It's just the conglomeration of like Latin music and rap and R&B and like just the way like that story is told is like amazing. Like I would love to direct that show. I would just love it. I think another one that I would really like to do is the musical Once, which is one of my favorite musicals. We read it in my English 12 class. It's based off of a film of the same name. And I like that musical probably for the same reason I like the newest Tony winner, The Band's Visit. It's quiet. It's a big story. It's a relatable story. It's a story that everyone can kind of understand, but it's not done with a giant orchestra and all this like glitz and glamour. It's done with musicians and just simple storytelling. And I think it's just really, really well done. Come From Away is the same way too, which is the story, or a true story of what happened on 9/11 in Newfoundland. But that one I don't think I could do justice to. I don't think I could get, I watch and I just weep every time I see it just because of that 9/11 piece of it. Yeah. But I would think those two like spring to mind. I'm sure there's more, like West Side Story. Yeah, I would totally do West Side Story in a minute too as well. That's another one. But that just goes back to, that's the first musical I remember watching as a kid.
Really?
Was West Side Story, because it used to come on TV all the time on Sunday afternoons, so I'd come home from church and watch West Side Story.
Is that TV. Where the whole spark for performing and the arts came from, right there?
It's funny because I think West Side Story, like I said, I remember watching on TV. And then for my birthday when I was 12, I got the record, because it was records, for a musical called A Chorus Line, which is also one of my favorite musicals because of that. I would have to say probably. That would be my mom and dad, like, figuring I needed something else to do. I talked a lot. I was already in dance class, so why not get this girl in musicals? So.
Yeah. All right. Going back to Walker.
Yeah.
Where do you want to see Walker Arts in the next 10 years, the future?
I think I'd like to see us continue to expand our connections with the outside professional world. I think we do a really good job of exposing kids to professional experiences and meeting artists that are in the field, and the band traveling and the show choir traveling, and then us taking the kids to New York, the Broadway Dreams Foundation being here every summer, and our kids having an opportunity to be a part of that experience. I'd love to see that kind of expand even more. I'd love to see us try to connect with organizations like the Alliance Theater, maybe even local universities that have really good arts programs, connect more with the High. I think we're eking towards that. I think it's a hard thing to try to do, but I'd love to see us us do that more. And in 10 years, God, it'd be awesome if we were in our own building.
Yeah.
That was sort of a contained, facility.
Yeah.
Where we could really be together. That's the other weird thing, because we've taken this old building and we've, utilized and they made the space all different than it used to be. Like, I'm over in one corner and arts is over here and the music's over here. We're not really connected physically. Yeah. And so I think, have our own building would, I think,
open up so many more possibilities.
Many more possibilities.
Yes.
I think collaboration would be kind of
seamless.
Always happening. Yeah, seamless. That's a great word. Yeah.
And this will be the last question. And every time, when you're introducing the play or musical, you see, you're a public speaking teacher. You're so good at it.
Oh, thanks.
And you make it seem like you have no butterflies in your stomach at all. But do you every year when you do that?
Yeah, there are many a year when I sit in the back row and I cross my fingers and hope we're going to do it.
Pull
because,
it off, yeah.
We've had there's been many an opening night where it's the first time we've run the show because things have gone wrong in tech rehearsals and stuff. So there are definitely there are definitely butterflies, but it's not, it's kind of weird. It's like,
Is it more so like goosebumps?
yeah, because like I know what it's gonna be like. We have so many kids every year that it's like their first opening night.
Yeah.
And so like I know what it's gonna feel like for them when it's over.
Yeah.
And I think I'm like nervous excited. Is that a word? I mean, I think
No, yeah.
that's really what it is, because like it's they've worked so hard, and it's so easy to criticize. It's so much easier to criticize things than to like say how good it is. And I really want that. I want it to be good for them. I want them to like feel so awesome when it's over. Like, how many times in their lives are they going to have an entire room of people standing up and clapping for something that they did?
Yeah.
Right? It's not like you get an A on a test and it's like, that's a great job. Like, that's awesome. Like, they
Everyone
don't really
stands
do
up.
that, right?
Yeah.
You know? And so I think I just want it to be, I want that moment to be perfect for them. And so I get nervous because they can sometimes talk themselves out of how fun it has been because they want to be so good at it. So I think that's why I get nervous. I also get nervous because, you know,
Things are unpredictable. Stuff can happen.
like sometimes I'm like we've had bookcases fall over in the darkness and books and Music Man display all over the floor, and we could see shadows of people trying to come on stage and pick up the books, and the band is like still like, I mean, like all kinds of weird things have gone on. Pants have ripped. People can't find costumes, like props. I mean, there's just many.
Yeah. But you know, you just have to
stories.
plan. You just have to try to plan. But you know, you can't always prevent that. But,
I think that's what makes theater so much fun, because there's going to be these unexpected moments, and for the kids backstage, those are the stories that actually they tell more than anything.
Yeah. And some of them do a really good job of working with it too.
Right.
And,
And sometimes it's totally obvious, and the audience appreciates the way they just go with it.
Yeah.
And sometimes the audience has no idea
Yeah,
what's
it's like,
happened.
But like you're like back there, just like,
Yes.
oh my
I'm
goodness.
usually like going like this. Miss Walker's usually hiding her face in her shirt laughing because we're like, we don't know what to do because we can't do anything.
Yeah.
Mr. Schreiner's like, the wheel is stuck. I don't know what to tell them. You know, like it's they happen, but it's fun. It's totally